I was having a little think about how I could add massive value to the community today, and I thought, how about focusing on the biggest mistakes that I've seen recently and how you can overcome them to build your rent-to-rent empires. And to be honest with you, I could go on and on and on. I've made a note of 9 that I've seen over the past few days, which I think would be really useful to you. I probably could go on and on and on, but my content guy's got to go home in a minute. So 9 seems ample. Just do me a single favor. If you're finding value from this content, obviously I do all this for free. I do this because I want to help as many people as possible. I do this because when I started, I did some property courses and I wasn't a big fan. I felt like I didn't get the ongoing support. I felt like loads of gaps were left and I felt like people just constantly trying to sell me. So I was like, hey, do you know what? I'm just going to do this for free and help as many people as possible. So if that sounds good, subscribe, comment below. So mistake number 1 is incorrect compliance. In other words, you're setting up your business, but you're rushing, you're not getting the right compliance, you're not setting things up correctly from day 1. And what that does is it puts you at risk, it puts the landlord at risk, and it ultimately puts the tenants or guests at risk. So you need to make sure you get the correct compliance. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, Simon, what's that? Well, if you search on the channel, I've done loads of videos on this. There's a 12 steps to setting up your rent-to-rent business. I highly recommend. Mistake number 2 is no safe exit. So when I'm doing a 5-year or 3-year agreement with a landlord, sure, I'm guaranteeing the rent for the entire term, but it's really important that you have a safe exit in the unlikely event that it doesn't work. And my rent-to-rent contracts give 2 months notice. So that means I'm going to guarantee your rent for 5 years, but if whatever happens, if the unforeseen circumstances happen and I can't do that, I can give 2 months notice. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably like, hang on a minute, who would actually agree to that? But the thought process is this. Us as the rent-to-renters are taking on the liability, and 2 months is seen as a fair enough period for the landlord to find alternative tenants. So it is a win-win, but it just protects your downside. I've spoken to so many of you who have committed to 3-year agreements with no exits, or worse still, break clauses for both parties, and it can end really, really bad. So you don't want to do that. Number 3, no rent-free period. So that means the landlord and you are going to sign an agreement, you're going to pay the rent, and it starts today. So if it takes you 10 days or 2 weeks or 3 weeks to set up the property, you're losing money from day 1. You cannot do this, everybody. It's so important, especially at the beginning, that you always negotiate a rent-free period. But you don't call it that. We call it a preparation period because nobody wants to give anything away for free, right? So make sure you negotiate that so you can hit the ground running. Number 4 is the wrong property selection. All right, you've just chose the wrong property with the wrong layout, with the wrong configuration in the wrong area, and you're fighting an uphill battle. So many of you are so focused on the deal that at times you're getting the wrong deal. And I've always said this, that a bad deal is worse than no deal at all. So don't rush. Make sure you do your research. Make sure you get educated and choose the right properties in the right area where you're gonna get the right results. Number 5 is the wrong landlord. Okay, we're so focused on finding the right property that sometimes we end up with the wrong landlord. And in my community, I talk about this. There is a 50% weight on what you need to have in order to make a good deal. Think of it as the recipe. 50% of it is a good property. 50% of it is in fact a good landlord. One without the other, you won't make the cake. Okay, you want a nice, fluffy, beautiful cake. You don't want something that appears beautiful, but when you bite in, it's quite sour. All right. And that is a great analogy for the right property with the wrong landlord, or indeed the right landlord with the wrong property. Let's say you meet a landlord, they're definitely on board. They love the idea of being hands off. They love the idea of you, but their property is a mess, or the property is in the wrong area. That's not going to work. Okay. So make sure you always focus on not just the property, but also the landlord. Super, super important. Number 6, no cash buffer. All right. So because rent to rent is sometimes perceived incorrectly, by the way, as a low money down strategy, that gives people the false hope that if you've not got much money, say you got $5,000 and it's going to take $5,000 to do a deal, you can do that and end up with very little money left. I don't recommend doing that, everybody. All right. I recommend raising some level of finance so that you've got at least 3 months operating costs, because what that's going to do is it's going to give you that buffer so you can take your time and get this right. There have been times in my business where I've looked at the bank account and I can't make rent. And if I don't get bookings this week, I'm going to be struggling because I'm guaranteeing $55,000 worth of rent. So in that scenario, I needed to make sure that I had, $150,000 plus in the bank account to give me that buffer so I can do the right things. Because guess what happens? As soon as you're desperate, you start dropping your rates, you start taking on the wrong HMO tenant, and before you know it, you get yourself into trouble. So you don't want to do that. All right. So number 6, make sure you have a cash buffer. Number 7, big mistake. So in my community, when you get a deal, you join Team Takeoff, and Team Takeoff is when you got one deal and you're now looking to scale. And a common mistake I see is people just stop. They're like, I'm just going to wait to see if this one works. And then if it does, I'll move on. And it's a fatal error. And the reason is, it's multifaceted, but just a couple of the reasons is, particularly if you're doing serviced accommodation, you don't want to be reliant on one property, because if you have one bad month, it wipes out your cash flow. So when you scale, believe it or not, it makes it less risky, because if you've got 5 properties and you have one bad month on one property, the 4 still carry it. In fact, you can have 3 or 2 bad properties that month, but you're still rocking and rolling. And what you tend to find with SA is you'll get one property where you'll get a 3-month booking. You'll get another one where you'll get a 2-month booking. You'll get another one that's a bit slow. You'll get another one where you've got sporadic short-term stuff. And you've got another one where you've also got short-term sporadic bookings. And those 5 together marry up beautifully. But if you've got one and it's sporadic and there's gaps, you're going to be in trouble. So don't do one deal and stop. Do one deal and scale. And if you've not got the money, raise the money. Get the partners. I've done loads of content on how to raise money and use none of your own money doing rent to rent, but you will need money. Okay. Quick pit stop, because the last few you're going to absolutely love. But before I go into those, if you're getting value from this, if you know that I'm the king around here, we have the biggest YouTube channel specifically on rent to rent. We have the biggest rent to rent community. We also have the Amazon best-selling book, Rent to Rent 2.0, The Art of Cash Flow and Property you don't own. So if you're getting value, hit the subscribe button. Number 8 is not sticking to the winning formula. See this a lot. A lot of you will do a deal. Okay, it's working great. Let's say it's a 3-bed in the city center. It's a house with parking, and you smash it. Then what will happen is you'll do a 1-bed 15 minutes away. That's not the same formula. All right. Or you'll do an amazing 5-bedroom property where you're smashing it. Then you'll do a 3-bed an hour up the road. So every time you do another deal, you're rolling the dice. I don't like to gamble, guys. So when you get a winning formula, rinse and repeat it until it stops working, and then pivot to a new area or a new bedroom count or a slight flip on the strategy. This is what I did when I started. I got a 3-bed property with 2 reception rooms, 4 lettable rooms. It smashed it. So what did I do? I did another 20 of them. Then I was earning 20 grand a month. And then I started trying something different. All right. So once you get a formula, stick to it. And last but not least, and this is potentially one of my favorite ones, I've put it down on my phone as marketing issues. And what I mean by this is we're so fixed on getting the deal that we don't prepare correctly in terms of the cash flow section. So if you follow me, you'll know there's 3 unique sections to my Rent to Rent 2.0 formula. The first is how to control the property. The second is how to cash flow that property. And the third is then how to systemize the business to free up your time. So sometimes we're so focused on control that we don't focus on the cash flow, which is marketing, refurb, and management. And if you don't get the marketing right, your property will sit there empty, you will struggle, you won't hit the figures, you won't get the results you're looking for. And that is why I seriously recommend getting educated, not just on how to get the deals, but how to cash flow, market, and optimize them as well. So there you have it. 9 key rent-to-rent mistakes. I highly recommend rewinding this and watching it again, making notes, and implement this stuff straight away, because there's a famous saying, to know and not to do is not to know at all. I appreciate you. I'll see you at the Super Conference, January 25th and 26th. I'll post a link below for how you can join us for the weekend. And whatever you do, don't wait 25 years. Get creative today.